Good morning, Bitcoiners. I have Avi Burra with me. He is a chronicler of our sovereign age, his guiding principle being that the only true rebellion against a disposable world is to create something that is meant to last, create those cultural artifacts, look at the things that have lasted through time, and how do we keep doing that in today's world and with Bitcoin, Nostr, everything else. Many of you know him as the host of Pleb Chain Radio, which he's built over many years with QW. He's a novelist, filmmaker, and architect, and he's building a new world based on sovereign truth. While his background started in engineering, robotics research, finance, even the healthcare industry, eventually leading to the blockchain industry and financial engineering, he's had a subsequent awakening, providing just an awareness of the decay and illusion of the fiat world. It culminated in the realization that Bitcoin was the only real clear signal in all the noise, led to a profound spiritual and intellectual transformation. I think many of us can relate to this, and I want to hear his story about that. So he has dedicated himself to creating the cultural artifacts and foundational tools for this coming transformational age. And his work follows kind of three core paths: as a storyteller, an explorer, and an architect, and of course with Pleb Chain Radio, the broadcasting for the sovereign web, exploring the synthesis of Bitcoin culture and the Nostr protocol. Lots to talk about today. Thanks for joining me today, Avi.
Pleasure to be here, Fritz. I think we're done here with that intro, Fritz. Is there anything left for me to say? I think we wrapped this up.
Yeah, I kind of covered it, I think. Although, let me add something. So you've said for many years, and being early as we are, as we're continually reminded how early we are in Bitcoin, you've said for many years that culture is upstream of adoption, and you are, heavily involved in creating culture through your various aspects of work. And but people don't. Many people do not register or resonate with the intellectual appeal, like I did. I was intellectually stimulated by the tech of Bitcoin or the finance stuff. But what you're tapping into is like the human story, the emotion, how it means something in relationships and the human journey. So that's what we could start with is between your books, your writings, your films, you're tapping into something human here, correct?
Absolutely. And, I will say, though, as you said, we're early. And for the majority of us who are here now, the early pioneers, it wasn't the culture or the emotional side that brought us here for the most part. It was the intellectual side, as you said. Case in point, myself, I came in because of the tech, also for the gains at one point. But my point about culture being upstream of adoption is for this movement to succeed, it needs to be a truly global movement. If it's constrained to, I don't know what the number is, optimistically 100,000, let's just say core believers, right? I'm not including the crypto people in this. I'm just talking about like the hardcore Bitcoiners. It's probably 100,000 people at a stretch. Right. And if it remains at that, I don't know if this is a success. We've had a good time. We've gone to nice meetups and conferences. We've had great steak. We've told great stories, listened to each other rant about fiat and all of that stuff. But we haven't made a meaningful dent in the world. Many of us, our parents, we haven't ensured that our children have a better future or something to look forward to, and their children have something to look forward to, if this movement just remains confined and constrained to us. So how do we make Bitcoin adoption, freedom tech adoption, more generally speaking, scale to the next 100,000, then the next million beyond that, and then the next billion beyond that? And I don't think it's going to be the same thing that brought us in, because we are the core believers. We were the pioneers. How do we get the settlers, and how do we get the laggards in, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, right. Mainstream adoption,
mainstream adoption. And it has to be. This is a strong thesis that I have, and I see early signs of it. Even though I first coined the phrase "cultures upstream of adoption" over 3 years ago, and people looked at me like I was insane back then. They still do, but we're seeing small signs of it play out. which is through the stories, through value for value music. There are more musicians coming in, uh,
Hmm.
talking about Bitcoin. There are more authors coming in, um, filmmakers as well. They're able to bring a small element of their fans in who otherwise would not have come in, and they've come in because of the art, because of the storytelling, and so on. So the next few waves of large adoption will have to be driven by culture, and culture is what creates that emotional appeal, that brings people in, as opposed to that intellectual appeal that brought you and me in.
Yeah, totally. And in a weird way, it's validating when you see, the suits enter the space. As much as I cringe at uh, shitcoinery and the fiat games and the rehypothecation or the even just Bitcoin treasury companies and stuff, while while I can I can easily judge it all as a based Bitcoiner that wishes everybody took self custody, ran a node, did all the things. And you wrote a funny thing about everyone's a shitcoiner. So it's like it's like I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and I'd like other people to be maxis. And people are like, "Oh, well, but how maxi are you? Like, uh, is your key fully entropy generated with dice? Which node do you run? Uh, what hardware wallet? Did you stamp on steel? Well, are you carnivore and all whatever?" So,
Yeah.
but I kind of wish more people sort of understood the fundamentals of it. That said, even as I cringe at sort of the walled gardens that are sort of capturing Bitcoin in a way, I mean, Bitcoin as a protocol is uncapturable and anti-fragile. I think of the upcoming Vegas conference where I noticed it last year, where it's like, it's big, it feels mainstream. There's a lot of money entering the space. There's the ETFs and all the companies. And I'm kind of like, oh, like I don't like all the suits. At the same time, it was inevitable. It's sort of validating, and maybe that's people's pathway toward a great realignment that's occurring. And so I feel mixed about the adoption happening, even as it's inevitable. It is a path forward, I suppose. Do you judge very harshly all the suits that have entered the space?
Yeah, I suppose I do. But I also recognize the inevitability of that. But I
Yeah,
will say one thing to what you said, Fritz, which is, what was it? Like, oh, yeah, Bitcoin is uncapturable as a protocol, it's anti fragile. I think at a technical level, you're correct. But there is a risk in sort of resting, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but a lot of people say this and they sort of rest on those laurels.
right,
Um, because what is absolutely capturable, and we are seeing this in play, is the human layer, the operators. Yes, maybe the protocol is much harder to capture, but the operators, the users of that protocol, are very easy to capture. They have all the frailties and all the fallibilities that any human being has: vanity, whatever it is, pride, so on and so forth. And you can play on those if you really wanted. If you're a bad actor, you play them
right,
like a flute. So if the human layer gets poisoned, at some point that could permeate into the decision making at the protocol layer as well.
right,
Uh, and there are enough honey badgers to fight back, but there are this is documented not just in history but in rich storytelling that mirrors history. There's Brave New World, right? There's you give people enough creature comforts and then they just stop feeling the need to fight. What if the honey
right,
badgers, maybe they have a weak point, right? Maybe some their version of bread and circuses that dulls the edge, and at some point the capture can happen. So uh, I I think this is not a time to be complacent. I wouldn't go so far as to call suits an attack on Bitcoin, but it's a door, an open door to a potential poisoning of the human layer. And I think it's
mhm,
critically important to remain vigilant and to ensure that cypherpunk values around privacy, around sovereignty, self custody, what have you, are still at the forefront. And it's a battle. It's a grind.
yeah, and we're perhaps seeing the fiat kind of incentives creep into, say, for example, the node disagreements going on now. other things in the space, or the on ramps and off ramps to Bitcoin. Like, oh, we're going to make it more accessible, more convenient. Um, there's that triangle Jeff Booth has pointed out of, like, being able to scale it, maintain privacy and security without, how do you do that without being centralized at times? You've worked through that, like, okay, company that, like, oh, we need to kind of solve this problem. Well, how do we do that? Well, we can do that and make it useful by making it more centralized, or compromising something around the protocol. And so I worry about those things for sure. And it's, in a way, people naturally are easily very, like you said, complacent, or we take the path of least resistance. So when you don't like need it, but you see it as a tool, you'll use it where it's useful and easy and all that. But you can easily be complacent. I think where Bitcoin can really drive itself forward naturally is when people do need it. We see adoption happening in other countries and other economies where, like, they truly need it, and so they're using it in a very strong, understandably based way, I suppose, along with sometimes they're tantalized by the idea of stable coins. But in America and other, in Europe and perhaps some of the mainstream economies, we don't exactly feel like we have that need, although things are changing. I see a lot of economic rumblings happening now. I mean, we could just look at oil, I suppose. The wars going on. It's possible, I suppose, that if the economy faces some real continued and perhaps inevitable collapses or ruptures, that people are already starting to be conscious of, oh, the money's broken. What does that mean? Like, it's new to them perhaps, but the money's broken. Or you're paying your taxes and you're thinking about, I like recently paying my taxes. It's like, I don't want to stop and think about where this money goes, or that it even funds enough of what they're trying to do, because they're going to print like mad, and it's just nuts. And so it reinforces my already long-standing views on this all. Perhaps other people will start to see it as well and think, well, maybe I should buy gold. Well, how do I use that though? So maybe Bitcoin grows and matures into some more mainstream minds through the macroeconomic ruptures happening. What do you think of what's happening lately? You said you mentioned to me as we entered this that you've been thinking differently about things happening lately.
Yeah, and we can get to that, Fritz. Maybe
Okay.
that's not specifically related to this, but
Okay.
I think for people to take that type of decisive action and truly wake up, they need to feel that cold, hard edge of discomfort. And our society, especially Western society, has become absolutely masterful at numbing that pointy tip, the pain of that pointy tip through material comforts. There was an old George Carlin throwaway line, and it's words to the effects of, well, what do you care? Your iPhone makes pancakes now. That's what matters, right? And and that's what. So it's the 69-inch flat screen TV. It's whatever. It's the Super Bowl. It's this. So maybe as the economic strain of the war, or maybe they turn the money printer on in the next month or two. Right? I'm talking about the U.S. here. Inflation, let's say, skyrockets as a result. Maybe people do start feeling the pinch, and then your NBA playoffs are not going to be enough of a distraction. The next iPhone is not going to be enough of a distraction. You're probably going to have to start thinking long and hard, especially if you're, middle class or lower in this country, which is a large part of the country, right? I mean, really, it's the top 10% or top 1% that lives a comfortable life because their investments are in assets. And assets are by nature hedged against inflation. They will go up. That's right. Stocks and what have you. So the vast majority of the country that doesn't have the luxury of this hedge, that has to, uh, basically live paycheck to paycheck, they will start feeling the pinch. The material comforts will not be an effective enough anesthetic, and that's when they wake up. But I
Mhm.
think that pain has to be there in Western society before any kind of meaningful change or awakening happens.
I worry that when people are under like the frog in the pot of water and it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and
Hmm.
we've ingrained ourselves with this feeling of like, this is fine, we're fine. I can still watch the game, or I can, maybe like I still have a job, or well, stock numbers went up, or real estate maybe is holding its value, and they may or may not. But they can kind of say, well, this is fine. But uh, I'm concerned also that when things aren't fine anymore, that people are going to be under this kind of panicked pressure of like, well, I don't know what the option is or the solution is. And with the fiat monkey brain going on, they are not thinking in terms of saving anymore,
Hmm.
or where to put savings. They're just constantly keeping up, treading
Yeah.
water, and or even as they lose ground, they're still, well, at least I'm just kind of keeping up and hustling harder. Uh, what I hope is that, yeah, more people wake up and consider, where do I put my time and energy? When you find Bitcoin, it really flips that switch for you, and it can do so hard. So you went through a whole paradigm shift with that, as Bitcoiners do. Like, I've got a daytime fiat job and I grind away at that. And as I've worked in Bitcoin, I start to reframe my sense of value in my own time and energy and where I'm putting that. And okay, I have to carve out so much to live currently, as I have a foot in the world of fiat. Um, but then I'll push on the side in Bitcoin, and also take time for family and make sure I have a balance there, but not be stuck. So
Hmm.
remembering that you have like this personal agency. Um, let me connect it to something from your background, where I'll just say something bold and you don't have to say anything about it, or have a response. Let's just say uh, the healthcare industry is a complete fucking scam.
Sure.
um,
It
I
is.
have,
Yeah.
I've, I look at the amount that I'll pay on like just health insurance sometimes, and that is a mess itself. But tell me about your journey when you were looking at your time and energy and value, and kind of took a courageous step to walk out and
Yeah.
go full in on your work, you're writing your book and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess in my recent past, 5, 6 year past, 7 year past now, I've had two moments of detonation. The first one was just realizing that I'd been in the blockchain world building all of this stuff, and I was trading crypto and all of that. That was around 2017, 18, 19. So the first detonation was, this is all a lie. It's a huge scam. Bitcoin's the only thing. Um, so then I changed jobs. I just left the blockchain crypto world, went into health tech, which, I'd worked in health tech in the past. So it was, wasn't something brand new. So I was able to jump back in, was doing that for a while. And then this most recent one that you alluded to happened sometime last year, where my company had the environment had become so toxic, because up until it had become toxic, the rationale I gave myself was, well, it's okay, it pays the bills. Yes, it's pointless work, but I have enough time to, find time to do a podcast. I wrote my first novel while I was still at that job, 24. um, but then somewhere in the middle, it started becoming truly toxic. So not only was there no meaning or purpose to the work, it was getting actively unpleasant. And sometime last year, that the nice fiat paycheck I received stopped feeling like it was worth it, because I was giving up my peace of mind, my time, everything to for nothing, for what, a fiat paycheck that allowed me to quote unquote stack sats for a future where what would happen in that future? Yeah, maybe when my son turns 30, um, and that one Bitcoin I've saved, let's say, is worth $10 million. Great, good for him. I'm dead. I've died of a heart attack 10 years prior to that.
Mm.
So what kind of a memory have I left behind for my son of a dad who was constantly stressed, constantly angry and bitter, constantly working himself to the bone, who died early and then left him with $10 million potentially, versus a father who's present while he was still young, while he was still a teenager, right? My son is still a teenager, uh, got to do things together as a family, the rich childhood experiences. And then maybe we don't have that one Bitcoin when he turns 30, but at least he's got to have a rich, rewarding life with his father. And I've got to, and I'm still alive. So
Right.
that was a very simple calculation. Hey, you know what? Maybe in a couple of decades, my son's going to come back and say, "Dad, that one Bitcoin that would have been nice. Why did you quit that job? I could really do
Right.
with $10 million right now." No, I'm kidding. But yeah, but that was a real. And once that detonation happened, and this was sometime late spring last year. It started happening around this time in 2025. It took me a couple of months to fully digest it, and then by May I said, okay, I'm out, I'm done. Give my 1 month notice, because I was running a large team. I couldn't walk out the next day,
Mm.
so I had to
Mhm.
do right by them. Gave my 1 month notice. I think July 4th. Intentionally, I picked that date as my last day at work, and I quit. And I'm doing a few odd things here and there. I really don't have that much Bitcoin. I've been trying to sell as little of it as possible to supplement the odd jobs I'm doing here and there. But
Uh-huh.
now it's all focused on the things I create.
Yeah, and your personal journey there, I've thought of those same things of balancing my current time and energy now to, okay, grind away and stack, thinking of the future versus also trying to be present here now as a dad, as a good
Hmm.
person, as a husband, all the things. And there's a balance there. It can be hard because you could be like, I'm just going to grind away till I die, and at least I left a legacy to the
Hmm.
for the future that I value something that's beyond myself. It parallels your book. So your first book, 24 here. Uh, it's a mysterious journey. S- uh, so um, so the character Oliver, his dad dies, and he is solving the puzzle of the inheritance, and it's kind of a surreal, psychological, somewhat magical, mystical kind of a
Hmm.
pursuit of treasure, which could also be a trap. But it's interesting in the way that it alludes to things that are um, beyond just our physical world. There's something mystical and magical to it, kind of like the myth of Satoshi and who he was, where Bitcoin came from, that inception story. There's a lot of mysticism and amazement to that. Do you want to describe this book, maybe how it paralleled your life, but the meditative,
Hmm.
paranormal aspect to it, if you
Yeah.
will?
Yeah. So as you said, this book follows the protagonist. It's a young man who's almost 24. It's a few months before his 24th birthday. His name is Oliver, and he works at a Web3 company. And he's a computer scientist. He's a young guy who's led a fairly sheltered life. His parents were well-to-do. They were divorced when he was 16. So that's the biggest traumatic and difficult event of his life was that. But he lived
Hmm.
an incredibly sheltered life, upper middle class, well-to-do father who worked in reinsurance, as far as he knew. Oliver knew. And then his father suddenly dies when he's in his 50s. And then over the course of the book, Oliver realizes that his father had led a double life, and he'd left these 24 words behind for him, which he works at Web3, but he doesn't really know that much about Bitcoin. It's just something he did. He got out of grad school and worked at the first company that gave him a paycheck. And then so he slowly starts learning about Bitcoin in the process of unraveling his father's mystery. But the way he does it is his father had left behind, apart from these 24 words, a message for him from a family friend, a German mystic, who teaches him this meditative technique that allows him to access past memories, right? And this is, so this part of it is not paranormal yet. That a meditation, a gentle hypnosis that allows you to access memories that you've buried in your subconscious. People do this all the time, right? And through
Yeah.
meditation, you can uncover things that you've sort of hidden. Whether
Science
you,
today is discovering a lot of amazing things about this stuff that it seems paranormal, but it's actually mental capability.
yes, absolutely. Now, here's where the magic realism comes in. This, I don't think, has any basis in anything. Uh, Oliver discovers, as he's doing these guided meditations, that not only is he able to access his past memories, he's able to access general stuff that happened to other people from the past. And then he also goes to this sort of pitch black purple place called the time chain, which he doesn't know. He doesn't quite know what that is yet. And there's this guy there, this sort of Mad Hatter type character called the Nonsmeister, who talks in riddles and poems, like this trickster guru character, who keeps talking about this place called the time chain. And so this character is someone from his father's bedtime story. So when Oliver was 8, his father used to tell him bedtime stories about a character called the Nose Smiter, but who's now become, in his visions, someone called the Nonsmeister. Who and so he understands a lot of things about Bitcoin, although the Nonsmeister never uses the word Bitcoin. He talks about the time chain.
Mm.
And so he's guided and tricked by the Nonsmeister along the way, and then he realizes that the treasure his father left for him came with several strings attached, just because of his hidden past. And the first book ends with them finding, with Oliver and his girlfriend finding an op return message that says obelisk July 18, let's meet there and then. And he's like,
Mm.
what is this? I thought I'd finally had closure, and now there's this random message that shows up in this connected to this address that I've been hunting for the whole book, that says obelisk July 18. Who wrote this? What is the obelisk? What is July 18? So the next book then picks up where the first one left off. It's called July 18, and then we learn the process of what is July 18, what is the obelisk, and what happens then.
What is the obelisk? The so July 18, part of the 24 series. So Oliver's completed his first quest, but remains stalked by adversaries, and again, more into kind of a metaphysical world with
Mhm.
with energies involved. And uh, uh, I haven't read this one. I'm just imagining where this could go, but it's sort of like a parallel being like when you found Bitcoin and you're navigating life itself with
Mhm.
Bitcoin, even as you have your physical kind of normie world of fiat, but
Mhm.
Bitcoin in the background is transforming things so hugely and in your mind, and that it doesn't relate to most people. And so you're like, you kind of lead a double life in a way where I go to my normal job or I interact with my normal people or with friends and family. When Bitcoin comes up, I've had to learn to just kind of manage myself with it and be cool and not get all excited or be like, if you don't understand it, like, fuck you. Like,
Yeah.
sort of like maintaining that balance where I can operate in two worlds. And the
Mhm.
Bitcoin world is really like, it's like another dimension, the time chain, this
Yeah.
behind the scenes reality and everything going on that is all very of much value and importance, and yet doesn't translate to Normieville. So
Mhm.
that's an interesting parallel, perhaps, from this
Oh
book
yeah.
and how people might experience Bitcoin in their life.
In, and I think you mentioned this, Fritz. This is certainly the case for me when the reality of Bitcoin landed. So this was the first detonation I was talking about. It's a spiritual process.
Hmm.
There is no other term for it. It wasn't an intellectual awakening where I was able to reason myself into where I was. It was, oh, I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. And this is the only thing that actually makes sense. It was a spiritual awakening. And I think, perhaps you went through it. I've talked to several other Bitcoiners who felt like when I truly understood this, the veil fell off. It was like the Matrix, right? You realize that
Yeah.
there's this sort of illusory world that we live in, and people are wandering through like zombies. And then there's this layer above it which is uncomfortable, right? It's not, hey, it's the world doesn't revolve around who won the football game, or which new movie by which new Bradley Cooper movie should we watch, or what's the new Taylor Swift song. Very comfortable world, which the first layer. But the one above it is where you have to confront yourself, you have to confront your demons. And then if you do overcome them, and by the way, the
Mhm.
temptation is strong, just like in the Matrix. It's like, I just want to go back. I want to unlearn all of this. I want to act like everything is okay. I don't want to
I
think
know.
about this stuff. But hey, you can't unsee this. Once you're here, you got to go through the process. That's the only way out is through.
Yeah, it can be hard to put the cat back in the bag in a way. Like maybe it's
Yeah.
impossible, but once you see it and you can't unsee it,
Yeah.
I think of like the psychology of that. Like your wife has a background work in
Hmm.
that realm, and I think about my Bitcoin journey where you discover it, and I think of like, okay, like kind of like denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Initially, like you're in denial or you're kind of a no coiner. And then when you
Hmm.
find it or you start seeing fiat everywhere, I was getting almost black pilled about everything, just like, oh, the world. And then
Hmm.
the bargaining part being like the hustle of the shitcoin altcoin game, and I'm so smart, or I'm going to play these things. And then when I settled on, okay, yep, no, but it's just Bitcoin. I'm going to stay humble and stack sats, but you still kind of have that fiat number go up in your brain. So when the
Hmm.
fiat number isn't like easily validating, you can go through kind of a similar grind that I see Bitcoin maxis out there now grappling with the price, the price, the price,
Hmm.
because it's our language of money as we operate day to day quite often. And when you're thinking of the future, or you're going to translate Bitcoin into fiat stuff, yeah, it matters variously to different people depending on how they live their life. But you can go through kind of that grind that even Bitcoiners I see today, or I'll feel it myself sometimes, of like, man, how long is this going to go on? Or when does Bitcoin turn that corner? Like again, but
I'll
but
tell you when you feel it most acutely. Sorry to interrupt, Fritz,
go
but I
ahead.
think you feel it most acutely when you're living off Bitcoin. You
Mm,
could talk about, hey, I've transcended the price. I'm yeah, when your when your day-to-day expenses are price, you're selling Bitcoin for your day-to-day expenses. That's when you feel the drop from 120K to 60K, and I'm there.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. And so I've had to stay humble aplenty lately, partially, even as my conviction remains completely strong. Like I'm thinking about the future. But when it comes up, it's easy for when I'm translating stuff to normies or talking about it generally, their minds, I know they're looking at it in terms of like, well, if they say, how's Bitcoin doing lately? And I know they're talking about the price. They're not thinking
Hmm.
about the decentralization or the security or the most peaceful revolution and the realignment of the entire corrupt criminal game going on. They're just looking at fiat. And so um, I have to like temper how I translate that for them. And so it's a patience game
Hmm.
when I walk in a fiat world or interact in fiat. That said, I still have a lot of big conviction with all the changes coming and stuff. Part of me just feels like, you know what? The inevitability part of it, it can't be avoided. They cannot fund all this stuff. When I say they, just powers that be that are printing the money, they're going to have to print the money. They're going to have to try to like kick the can down the road, add more to the debt, uh, maintain liquidity, prevent the stock market from crashing, try to also allow boomers to retire on their real estate or um, not have things go insolvent. I mean, Social Security has maybe 6 years left or something in it right now. They have to print the money. And so these things that are looming where Bitcoin is a fix, it's like any moment now, 2 years down the road. I don't know, but
Hmm.
I'm there for it. So it's
Yeah,
conviction and patience. Um,
for
I
sure.
will I will bring the screen real quick. Go to Amazon. People can go to Amazon. You can search for Avi Burra here, and all of your books are available here. July 18 is the sequel in the 24 series, and your first book, the 24th. And are you still writing? Are you working on new things?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is the thing I mentioned to you, that my perspective on this is changing a little bit.
Okay.
I think over the last couple of weeks, I've been coming to the realization. So let me frame this first. In the Bitcoin world, right, of the 100,000 or so of us, let's just say, again, generous number, but let's say hardcore Bitcoiners, there are 100,000 in the world over. There are two types of people, broadly speaking. One is the ones who are pioneers, who are creating something. It could be a podcast, it could be writing books, they could be building products, whatever it might be, right? The pioneers who are in full on creator mode. And then the people who are consumers. The consumers tend to be, for the most part, relatively new to this world. They've just come into the fold and they're like, look, I'm learning, I want to consume. And they reach, and this is all, given the nature of Bitcoin and Bitcoin culture, this is a rock solid inevitability that I've noticed in the last 4 or 5 years, which is at some point the consumer says, enough, I'm ready. I have learned. Now I want to contribute. I'm filled with this hope and this energy. I understand the problems. I understand how the solution works. Let me find what I'm good at and let me just contribute to this revolution. And and so the cycle continues, right? Uh, so what are as someone who's creating, you have especially if you're creating something in so Bitcoin specific, especially as in my case, the books, you kind of have to be a Bitcoiner to really appreciate them. Yes, there've been a couple of non-Bitcoiners who read it and it was fine, but really it's catered to Bitcoiners. Uh, so the question you need to ask yourself as a creator is, what are this limited and quickly changing set of consumers willing to consume? And honestly, for the most part, it's mostly the technical stuff, right? It's if there are if they are technologists, developers, then they want to understand what's the latest that's happening at the protocol level, what hardware wallets, what's happening with Lightning, right? What's happening in Nostr. They want to consume that sort of deeply technical content. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other type of consumers are the ones who might not be developers, but they're in it for the macroeconomics, they're in it for the Austrian economics, they're in it for understanding the world, the issues with fiat, and so maybe potentially political things. So they're
Mm-hmm.
consuming that type of content, right? Also technical, but not computer science related necessarily. So with that said, if what the realization I've come to is, even though Bitcoin unlocked this need and desire in me to in create what I want to create, which is write these soaring stories of philosophy and fiction films and so on. The product market fit within the niche is not there, at least not yet.
Mm.
And I think this is something any artist who's creating Bitcoin specific work will have to grapple with at some point or the other, which is, yes, Bitcoin has unlocked this passion to create, but are you creating for the right crowd? Are you creating for the crowd that will actually value your work? And I think at this early stage, the answer, sadly, very sadly, is no.
Mm.
So, what is the solution here? And this is something I'm working through, right? This is, and this is a half-formed thought here, Fritz. So bear with me and the audience, because this is something that's entered my mind about a week or two ago. But I think the solution here is not to abandon your craft, right? Understanding Bitcoin just unleashed this beast, this creative beast in you.
Mm-hmm.
You've just been targeting the wrong niche. Just focus on a broader niche where there are more consumers, right?
Mm,
Maybe people who found contentment, whether it's an illusion or whatever it might be, right? But they found contentment, so they're willing to sit back and consume and don't make it all about Bitcoin. As an artist, I mean, maybe subtly orange pill them, right? And that's, you will find your consumers there.
mhm.
There are too many pioneers in Bitcoin, man. That's the problem. No one has time. Everyone's trying to create, everyone's trying to make it. Nobody's got time to see what other people are creating.
Mm, yeah, I can see that, and I've interviewed a lot of like Bitcoin artists and other creators where Bitcoin gives them such a purpose and energy. Where
Hmm.
one thing that it fixes it in a nihilistic world, it's like, well, I can like put my energy towards creative things, but I sometimes you don't have that kind of foundation of purpose or hope. And so at least Bitcoin can plant that seed of a common purpose, a hope, a direction. But then ultimately there is the business end of it.
Hmm.
You know, you have to eat and have shelter and pay for stuff. So then you're still navigating like, okay, I got to make money some way somehow. So blending the two, where you hold on to that purpose and the direction, but you can still hone a craft that doesn't have to be just Bitcoin, say. And I mean, ultimately, like let's say we're on a Bitcoin standard, people are going to do all kinds of many things that they
Hmm.
have done in the past. Also, with AI or other changes, there's going to be new and different things. I have thought many times, well, about personal life change, sure, my options perhaps, but a lot of people, you find Bitcoin and you're like, okay, well, what now then? Uh,
Yeah.
how much should I change, or do I have to change, or how do I reframe what I'm doing now? Um, it may be that, yeah, people are still gonna farm, still gonna manufacture, still gonna make art, still do things, but maybe they can be floated by a sense of longer term, broader purpose to it that's not
Hmm.
so survival fiat. I've thought about like if people had a roadmap for sort of like, okay, instead of the fiat hustle, what is your based thriving change? It's going to be change. People are going to have to like change and navigate a new world, but staying based, if you will, and think of the longer term personal responsibility about thriving. BTC being based, thriving, change.
Mm.
People need maybe a roadmap, and or well, I this is where I found myself is that I'm in a fiat job. I'm very busy. I'm a good dad and husband and all that, and I'm busy. And so then you make some space for Bitcoin, but then you realize how much it's affecting you, and you're grappling
Hmm.
with your psyche around
Hmm.
trying to do all the things and get enough sleep. And so I think a lot of people are going to go through a process where they see changes happening with or without Bitcoin, but the world is changing and they've got to pivot or adjust. And yet you can't just jump off the high dive.
Right.
You might jump into the pool, but you're still swimming, just something
Yeah.
different. I don't know. I don't always know what to recommend to people on what to do other than don't be impulsive, don't be crazy, but start to just hone a craft in a direction. Maybe that's a hobby that becomes something else. Maybe that's your current job and you just incorporate different incentives
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah.
It's part of a great realignment.
I think if your job is not toxic and it gives you enough time for family and to pursue your hobbies, then I think it's foolish, especially now with the price. Again, talking about price, with the price
Mhm.
being where it is, to take that leap right now. Now, if your job is truly toxic, as it was in my case, I would say life is too short for
Yeah.
that. Just don't deal with it. But Fritz, I do want to. So just want to tie back to my previous point because your question was, am I going to keep writing, right? So with all of that
Mhm.
said about uh, everyone's trying to almost everyone's trying to build as a Bitcoiner, and people as a result of that they just don't have that much time to consume, and the only consumers are they tend to be the new ones who want to consume very specific kind of content. So if you're, especially if you're someone you painter, a filmmaker, a writer, and a musician, don't necessarily cater your music entirely to the Bitcoin crowd. They're just not going to have the time for it. I would think more broadly about it, target it, and then through subtle orange pilling, or not even don't even mention Bitcoin. Right? There's no need to. Right? You
Hmm.
can you can get people into the fold in different ways through this culture being upstream, right, of adoption. So
Uh-huh.
in my case, Fritz, anyone who's read 24 July 18 knows there's going to be there needs to be a third book to sort of continue the story. I am actually going to put that on pause for a while
Hmm.
till there are more people in the Bitcoin fold who would be willing to read that kind of fiction. And I've actually written another book under a pseudonym, nothing to do with Bitcoin. I borrowed a lot of the similar themes, character archetypes, narrative arcs. I'm writing it under a pseudonym just to sever the identity. Um, and I'm going to write the stories that way under that pseudonym for the next few years at least. So unfortunately, to the 20 or so people who are looking forward to the third book in the trilogy or whatever it ends up being, you'll have to wait a few years because uh, it's too early right now. It's too much work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the amount of work that goes into writing and publishing a book is not trivial for it. So I
Oh
really need to
yeah.
ask
Oh.
myself, pouring my heart and soul into something that perhaps isn't yet going to receive the resonance that it ought to. I need to think twice about stuff like that.
Sweet Betty says good morning to us here. She's tuned in. Uh, it brings me to that sense of reframing economies, the value.
Hmm.
I mean, what do you call it? But there's different exploratory realms of what value to value is. So there's value
Hmm.
to value. You've been doing for years now, Pleb Chain Radio. And what I
Hmm.
love, it's not just a radio show, but what you're incorporating here with Fountain and the tech with Noster is incorporating music,
Hmm.
rewarding artists when you play music or you get zaps, and how you can help create and contribute to this circular economy. So
Hmm.
people can promote and support your show not just by listening or giving it likes and attentions and posts and stuff, reposts, but zaps, the magic of zaps, and then you can also reward, for example, in the music area, when you incorporate bands you found, music songs you like, and you play those. And so you've been doing this for quite a while now, with starting in December 2022 with QW, and
Hmm.
have continued this. You're on episode 157 now, so uh, that's some dedication.
Hmm.
A weekly show, which you've actually expanded now to more than that too, right?
Hmm. Yeah. It's so I started this in the early days of, it's a little after December 2022, Fritz, maybe February of 23. So
Okay,
December 2022 was when I met QW or Noster, and then that's when
talking
the
about
early
it.
days of, we
Yeah.
talked about it, launched it in February of 23. And so it's been going over 3 years now. It's actually three shows in one. So there's Sunday Brunch, which you can see for folks who are watching the video, you can see that at the top. That's a music value for value focused show where where I interview a guest. They bring five of their value for value songs. We play them, and then we just chat about life. It's not a particularly serious discussion. It doesn't have to be. Although with
Hmm.
Bitcoiners, always we end up talking about typically Bitcoiner things. But the idea is it's just a light Sunday brunch type conversation. Play the music, and then people can support the artist by boosting or zapping and so on. And then there's the original show, which is Pleb Chain Radio. That's the one that's had 157 episodes that you were mentioning, Fritz.
Right.
Uh, and that I could talk to builders, philosophers, creators, slightly deeper conversations about what they're building and so on. And then there's a more technical show. I'm also an engineer, as you mentioned at the beginning. That's focused on. It's called Say What. It's focused on web of trust and that sort of thing. But as you could see here, right, you could see on the screen the people who zap in, boost in. We're not talking about millions of dollars here, but episodes could make 10, 20, 30. Sometimes the better ones or the more popular ones make $100 sometimes. But
Uh-huh.
that's kind of, yeah, you see, sometimes you get the big zaps like that,
Yeah.
33,000 sats.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just having it at all, that capability with the tech is awesome. And it could be very transformative, down the world, instead of having it top down fed to you like, well, what do you watch on TV? Well, whatever's on. Or what do you listen on the radio? Well, whatever the top five stations are. People can
Hmm.
seek it and participate in it, and creators they're not just hoping to like break free into the mainstream, but they can simply, as they create, get value back for that, as people simply listen and tune in very small ways, the microeconomy of that. So that's awesome.
Hmm.
And then one thing that, I mean, everyone eats. Something that resonates with people in life is food. And so you have, I mean, of all the things you're working on, you've had a series now. More recent one happened in Paraguay. Last
Hmm.
episode was in Paraguay. This is about food, well, the intersection of food, freedom, and finance, asking what it truly means to find a home in the world, a world with new borders and new money. I think people are rethinking things about life in terms of, you know what? I've thought about this myself. Why do I do the work I do? Why do I live where I live? If
Hmm.
my money can be transported with me, if my value and time can be, um, has a sense of personal agency about it, a lot of people are starting to explore their options on Earth, or thinking beyond the horizon, or a previous presumed horizon. So people are starting to really explore. This Finding Home is a series that you've worked on that features food and good conversations, the best conversations that happen over good food. So
Hmm.
tell me a little bit about that. And most recently was in Paraguay.
Yes. So I'll talk about the episodes. Well, I'll talk about the series. I've always enjoyed travel shows, and my favorite by far was Anthony Bourdain,
Uh-huh.
because he wasn't just a guy who went around eating food and saying goofy things, right? Which a lot of travel shows end up being. It's like if you watch something like Somebody Feed Phil, it's a lovely show, but at the end of the day, Phil's just a goofy guy who, and then there are others like that. But Bourdain was a true philosopher. He wanted to deeply understand his subject. He wanted to deeply understand the place, the culture, the history, the soil, and of course the food. And then of course he's no more, and
Yeah.
that's kind of left a void in that intersection of food, philosophy, culture, at that deep level. At a non-frivolous deep level. Now, obviously, there can only ever be one Bourdain, but my thought was if there was some way in which I could even remotely play homage to Anthony Bourdain,
Uh-huh.
um, by doing something like what he did, traveling to places, talking to people, understanding their story, understanding their food and culture, then let me try it. So I started the show. Started off as an experiment, really, called Finding Home. Obviously, wanted to put my own sort of take on it, and the idea is to follow expat stories of how they found home in a new land,
Mm-hmm.
and what they're building. Now, as it turns out, the first few episodes, these are all Bitcoiners because that's my circle. But I think, broadly speaking, I want that aperture to be as wide as possible. Yes, starting off, it's easier to reach out to friends, easier to find camera people and editors who are Bitcoiners, right? So it's the first four episodes are more Bitcoin themed, but telling the story of these Bitcoiners who are living in a new country, creating a life there, and obviously the parallel is Bitcoin in their case, right?
Mm.
So that's kind of the broad idea. I filmed a pilot in New York City, which is it was a pilot, so we wanted to do something quick and easy just to make sure the format works. But it was a great subject. Shakib, who's restaurant owner of Safari restaurant, a Somali restaurant in Harlem, the one of the few places in New York City to accept Bitcoin. So I had a nice conversation with him. That was the pilot. Then the second one was in Prague, when I was at BTC Prague last year, and I traveled there and had a great conversation with Grafton Clark, who works for Vexel. It's a spin-off from Satoshi Labs. They related to that whole Satoshi Labs Trezor family. They're working on peer-to-peer privacy focused Bitcoin exchange. Great conversation with him. He's a guy from Mississippi who's living in Prague, which is kind of cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's been living there for 15 years. The third one was in Paraguay, as you said. I filmed with a Czech guy, Jan Kotas, who's moved to Paraguay, Asunción, Paraguay. And he's building a life there for himself. He has this company called Hacking Lives that helps expats move to Paraguay, take advantage of the tax residency and just the higher quality of life and so on. And then the last episode, which is going to be released in the next couple of weeks, sometime before mid-April, was filmed in the UK, in London and Manchester, with, you might know him, Roger 9000, musician,
Okay.
chocolatier, Australian expat who's found a life there in the UK and really around the world with a guy like Roger. So that'll come out in the next 2 weeks or so. So that's 4 for now. And I think what I want to do with the show is take this sort of portfolio of 4 episodes and find a home for it, ironically, where I can get a lot of distribution, let as many people as possible hear these stories of hope and inspiration, and how people who can move to a new place and do incredible things, right? There's so much anger and despair in the world. I think these stories, I'm hopeful it can inspire people. So yeah, that's a little bit about the show.
And that's what I love about, Anthony Bourdain being an inspiration with it's not just, it's so much more than just, yes, he's a chef and into food, and then, connecting that with culture and different styles and tastes and all that thing. But I did love how he taps into a big picture, what does this all mean, or exploring the edges of kind of who we are on this planet. Why do we do what we do, traveling, and what is your potential, and pushing your limits, not just sticking with the same old thing, but go explore, see the world, experience it through food, meeting other people. It's the relationships. And in the end, it's that it's not just food so that you can work more or be efficient and just gobble it down and keep working. It's being here now, having that conversation, having positive energy, and connecting with others, looking at the big picture of like, what is it that we're doing here? Why do we do that? The big questions. And food can be intrinsic to all of that, because it's, where the food comes from, how it's prepared, how it's presented, how you consume it, and who you do that with, and the conversations you have. And you can really tap into so many things, plus incorporating with people who are, say, in tech, connecting how technology is also right at the forefront of all these changes. I love the dichotomy of something as based as like food with sense of place, technology, interesting personalities. And it's really quite inspirational to see you doing that. The production looks great. I mean, the drone shots, the lighting, the man on the street and sitting down at bits of stuff happening at conferences. It's a real amalgamation of all kinds of cool and interesting stuff. So
yeah,
I love it.
No, I appreciate you saying that. I think that just the other thing I'll say about it is, there is a lot of really good Bitcoin content out there on YouTube, right? Like the people who do it. What I wanted to do was, and what you were showing on your share screen just now, Fritz, was the snippets from YouTube, right? The entire episodes are not on YouTube. I've made a
Okay.
very conscious choice to say this is going to be Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV quality production. Now, hard on a small budget, which I'm sort of relying on friends and family to put together funding for, but
Hmm.
was able to find the right talented people to elevate this beyond, from a production quality wise, beyond the standard free YouTube content to something that's approaching Netflix quality. That is the idea, that this has to be a beautifully shot, professionally done show.
Uh-huh. Where can you find the full episodes then?
The full episodes are on a lightning enabled pay-per-view platform. It's called indiehub.studio.
Okay, I'm just looking it up.
Yeah, if you go to indiehub.studio, I might ask you to sign in, but once you're signed in, you can go to the episodic section and you'll see it there, Finding Home.
Okay. Um, Let me see if I can find it. Oh, I see. Two E's, NDE. So let's
Yes,
see. This it here, Indie Hub.
that's it. That is the one. And you might need to sign in to get in to see the full catalog.
Okay, okay. So you can sign into indiehub.studio. You can sign in easily with whatever profile connector deal you do, however you want to do that, and
Hmm.
find Finding Home there on
Hmm.
indiehub.studio. Awesome. Yeah, I know. Well, so speaking of those walled gardens of content, I mean, for example, this podcast, many others, it's like, okay, at one level, I just want to get it out there.
Hmm.
Um, I don't want to be too isolated. I mean, it's a Bitcoin show, but I'm happy for it to be, I not that I love algorithms, but algorithms
Hmm.
can tap into it and get it out there to other random people. But okay, the easy mechanisms are often things like, okay, there's X and there's YouTube and then there's Rumble and there's some alternatives. And then for podcasting, okay, you got your Spotify and all the things. Um,
Hmm.
Fountain is one that I'm working toward, and it is accessible. It's just, tapping into the tech a little bit. And I know Fountain is working on things to allow it easier for creators to click go and have it be streaming and kind of have a plug and play deal. All of this technology is still growing and coming together. So it's going to get easier. But my goal really is get it on Fountain, get it more on Noster, and have it accessible to people. So it's outside of the walls of various
Yeah.
corporate gardens, if you will.
But let me ask you this though, Fritz, because we are with podcasting, we are talking about an open standard, right?
Mhm.
It's RSS. It's not related to Bitcoin necessarily, although Podcasting 2.0 has incorporated Lightning payments into it, which is how my show gets boosted and zapped on Fountain. If
Uh-huh.
you do release your show as an RSS feed, which I'm assuming you do if you're on Apple and Spotify,
Yeah, it's
there's a
just going
pretty good
elsewhere. Yeah.
chance. There's a pretty good chance if you go to Fountain and you search for it, it'll be there, because that's what an open standard like RSS does. It gets I think it's the S in RSS stands for syndication actually. So if you just search for your show on in the top right, wherever you had my show, right,
Yeah.
which you wish,
Yeah.
yeah.
And in the past, I have, I mean, I've only dabbled in this because simply need to lean in with my time. But
Hmm.
um, let me just see if I can find. I was on RSS.com at one point. At least uh, I connected on that. You mentioned, so I could go to zap.stream for sure, and that's
Hmm.
another way to do it. And my
Hmm.
internet also may not work while we're streaming here very well, but in any case,
Hmm.
I've got work to do because I want to
Hmm.
participate in the circular economy and be untethered from particular gardens. As it is, it's like, okay, yeah, it's RSS or RTMP and those protocols,
Hmm.
but they're going to these walled gardens. And at one level, that's an audience. At another level, I'm beholden to, you know, access that they allow sometimes. So
Hmm. Yeah.
anyway, um, now we can all kind of ponder all the big picture things. I guess I'd say at a spiritual level, if you're good for that, the big transformative personal changes you've had with it, it's it's hinted at and also fairly overt in your books.
Hmm.
Um, how much are you willing to share about how it's changed you at maybe a deep level, the spiritual level, maybe contemplating the nature of our mind?
Hmm.
What might you delve into in that regard if we think of the most exploratory things, perhaps philosophically, with
Yeah,
what Bitcoin means to us, but also what our spirit or soul is doing here?
yeah. So again, I talked about the two detonations.
Mhm.
Um, Both of them have a blast radius. I'm still trying to understand what the blast radius of my most recent detonation is. Maybe I need a few more years to fully digest that. But I certainly see the blast radius of my first detonation, which is that holy crap, I was wrong. Everything I've been doing has been wrong, and Bitcoin's the only thing. And I think that was almost like an ego death experience in a strange way, right? I know ego death means
Yeah.
something a, a little different here, but it was being able to look at myself without any filters and say, you were wrong, and that's okay. You can start
Mm.
over again. And I think that just opened up um, pathways that I didn't know existed in my mind, which is, oh, you can actually start over. You can, and anything is possible. I would like you can always look back on something and acknowledge it, and then just do something else. So in some sense, it just opened up the possibilities to anything. Um, so normally, if there were so for example, like I'm an engineer, Fritz,
Mhm.
right? I'm trained as an engineer, electrical and financial. I'm a guy who sits in an office and crunches numbers. How is a guy like that making a Bourdain inspired travel show, writing two books about magic real, actually three under third one under pseudonym, magic realism, doing a podcast where I have musicians on my show playing their music for me, professional musicians, not just amateurs.
Mhm.
How does that happen? And I think that happens when you allow, well, the blast radius of the first detonation was just making those neural pathways more pliable, saying, hey,
Mhm.
you want to do something, then just do it. What are you waiting for? Whose permission are you waiting for? um, the other, and on the topic of permission, right? So that kind of goes back to the second event from a year ago, when I quit my fiat job, which was the realization that you understand this as a father, Fritz, right? Which is, as a man of a certain age, at a certain stage in life, there is this immense responsibility. There are people who are depending on you, right? You cannot just say, "Hey, I'm off to the pub." I mean, by the way, there are men who do that, and
Right.
we all know what happens when in those scenarios. I'm done. I'm hanging out with my buddies. You deal with it, like your 7-year-old boy. Figure it out. Cook your own
Check out
food.
a little bit.
Check out a little bit. So I'm just going to spend my time at the pub. Um, so it's people don't. We talk about it, and even as men, we laugh about it. But there are moments when that burden feels incredibly immense,
Mhm.
moments of weakness, I would say, right? But the moments, and these exist. We can't. I'm not going to deny that these moments don't exist.
Sure.
uh, and and that can translate to a warped thinking, which it did for me, which is, I have all of this responsibility. I can't even. I shouldn't be thinking about myself. Yes, I'm upset about this job. Yes, the job is incredibly unpleasant. Yes, it's incredibly toxic. But what kind of a man am I?
Mhm.
Uh, I'm gonna take it like a man. I'm gonna deal with it, and then very soon that will become, oh shit, I'm trapped. From the bravado to, oh crap, like, yeah, I can't quit. But even if I wanted to, I'm a prisoner here, because if I quit this job, who's going to feed my family? Right?
Yeah.
They're looking to me to take care of it. And I think part of that spiritual awakening was, what prison? The only prison that exists is the one that I built for
Right.
myself. I
Hmm.
hold the key. The door was open, or what, or I could just stick the key into the lock and open the door. There is no prison. I've all of these things that I'm saying, all these responsibilities. What will they do? This, that. It's a prison that I've built. No one else has built it. No one's forcing me to stay here. I can walk out. And that also, in its own way, Fritz, an incredibly liberating thing for you to realize that you have the agency. Yes, you have responsibility, but it's in some sense you reframe responsibility into response and ability. It's your
Yeah.
ability to respond. Uh, so yeah, that was another sort of spiritual level of awakening, realizing that I'd built a cage for myself.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And as you start to, Bitcoin, for example, changing your incentives, and then you're taking on more personal responsibility, and you're feeling, okay, I'm not stuck, am I? No, I can go out there and do things. I can do whatever I need to or want to do, and yet be responsible. And I started to ask these fundamental questions about, like, especially as my old world was kind of getting torn down, and I just had you know, my eyes were open to it.
Hmm.
I started to ask questions like, who am I? What are my incentives? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And yeah, it was questions like, know thyself. Who am
Hmm.
I now? Or I'm changing. I've changed. Who am I now? Not to overly judge where I came from, but just to say, okay, I need to build a new foundation. When I think of people building a new foundation, it's your web of trust.
Hmm.
Now, you've referred a lot of times to things about the web of trust. We can imagine things like there are tech things about who and how you trust who you do, whether that's, instead of being in a walled garden, for example, but on Nostr, there's a different kind of a web and trust and how you navigate that. At a high level here, there's a web of trust here through Nos Fabrica. So
Hmm.
this is another venture you've started to build on and have built. Tell me about Nos Fabrica. It looks like a big overarching aspect to this web of trust. And I love the website here, by the way, how it kind of lures you into transitioning from a legacy of chaos over to a web of trust.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Nostra is obviously a very new network. It's an open protocol where you sort of break out of the walled gardens, right?
Hmm.
And then, the it really interest in Nostra picked up in December of 2022. We mentioned the date in the past.
Uh-huh.
That was when Jack Dorsey said, "Hey, he tweeted about it, and he said, I love this project. I'm going to give the lead developer 14 Bitcoin back then." To help maintain it. I'm going over there. So a lot of people tested it out. I was one of them. I saw his tweet and I said, "What is this Nostra thing?" And I was getting annoyed with X Twitter back then, just
Sure.
because it was becoming a really angry place. That was around the time the SBF and FTX thing was going down, and I think Elon was trying to buy Twitter at that time. It was just an ugly time. I mean,
Uh-huh.
Twitter's still an ugly place today, but that was especially so. Um, so I said, I had nothing to lose. So I said, let's try this out. I went there and found a tribe there, and that's grown over time to an extent. I mean, Nostra has not seen the meteoric growth that a lot of people in the early days hoped for, but that can change. And I think one of the issues with Nostra as it stands today is, if you're an artist or a podcast or someone who's trying to who's new and who's heard that there's an audience of a few thousand people but passionate honey badger level intensity,
Uh-huh.
who you might be able to tap into, maybe it's even 10,000 people, right? I don't know what the exact number is. um, how do you get found? You
Right.
go there, and you know no one. Maybe the one person has brought you along or told you about it. You post something, it goes into the void. Same problem as Twitter. So there's a there's the idea of web of trust, which is from your perspective as an individual. You're connected to a certain number of people. They're connected to other people, whether they're following them or they're interacting in a positive way with them. And that sort of allows you to broaden your aperture into the network, by finding these signals of trust, right? So if someone's commenting on another person's posts, and you're not following that other person, through that positive engagement, uh, that sends you a signal that this might be someone to engage with, the through zapping and so on. So how do you capture all of these signals and present them to a user in a way that allows them to curate their web of trust? That's what we're building at Nos Fabrica, right? The ability to from any given user's perspective, being able to take a broad view of the network. Our algorithm crunches through all of these network signals. It can be zaps, it can be follows, it can be muting and reporting as well. Those are negative signals, right? We need to weigh those as well, and then comes up with a perspective of the Nostr network for a given user. And I think the difference between this is powerful compared to, let's say, a Twitter or Spotify or any of these walled gardens, is they do some kind of web of quote unquote web of trust as well. Their algorithm, right, tells you what you should be watching, what you should be listening to. That algorithm is from their perspective, from the platform's perspective, not from your perspective, right? So these are completely centralized algorithms, and the platform can do whatever the hell they want. And of course, what they want is to make money off you, right? It's just,
you're kind of the product.
You are the product. So they will tweak the algorithm in exactly the way to increase your engagement for you to stay just a little bit longer, so that they could sell ad revenue to you, because essentially that's what that is, right?
Right.
That's how they make the money. So you're going from centralized single algorithm to personalized individual algorithms or perspectives of the network. So that way you can discover musicians that you like. You can discover podcasters that you like that you would have otherwise never heard of before, or you can accounts to follow that you like. But this trust substrate, Nostr by itself doesn't have this out of the box. What it has is the raw material, the signals, people's interactions. There's the zaps, the comments, the follows, the mutes, the reports. We are building a completely open source and transparent algorithm that digests all of these existing signals and produces a cohesive output that a user can use to curate their web of trust.
I love it because, sort of like the convenience of technology, and I don't do Facebook anymore or like LinkedIn. I find some of that stuff so cringe. But X has a lot of prominent influencer information stuff on there, and the algorithm often does hit and miss, like, okay. But then if I scroll enough, there's a reason they call it doom scrolling. It's like I'm watching fights or car wrecks and police body cam and all this stuff that I have to peel myself away because it's definitely capturing my reptilian brain. But then it's like, why am I getting this? And why I just keep watching this stuff. You switch over to Nostr, you get pure, clean signal, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know. You got to go out and find it. Okay, I'll follow them. After a while, you follow a lot of good people, but then you can miss it if they didn't post for a while and it gets buried. And so you don't have an algorithm to also kind of help you. So what you're doing here, at least one of the aspects of Nos Fabrica, is perhaps your own personalized algorithm when you're navigating Nostr.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Awesome. I love it. That it's going to help people a lot. And there you are on the team of Nos Fabrica. People are going to find this very useful, and it's going to also help Nostr. When people complain about Nostr, it's like, I can't find stuff, or I missed that. I didn't see that, whatever. It's adding that element of personalization and control over a feed that can be maybe a clearer signal for you, or you don't have to wade through it to find stuff or deliberately search for it. It kind of helps serve you, but without you being a product. So I love it. Awesome. Now, go ahead.
No, I appreciate you saying that. That's great.
Yeah. So speaking of Nostr, and whatever client you use, you can find Avi on Nostr. You can simply search for Avi. That's how I found you. AVI. You're there on Nostr, as well as your Pleb Chain Radio. on Noster, broadcasting regularly through Fountain. And so it's awesome. Oh, and I didn't bring up your website yet. You can go to casanostra.inc. This is all your stuff. I mean, well, I should say a good selection of a lot of it, because as you go down through this, Casa Nostra tells you about Avi and your books and your Finding Home docuseries, your writings, you've written a lot of stuff as well, and your Pleb Chain Radio. When I go to your writings here, that's where I found, among many of your writings that you've made here, thoughts on things from your books there, little shorts. And one of them here, everyone's a shitcoiner. Now, here's what I enjoyed about your writing too. What I enjoy about your writing, it makes me think of Tomer Strolite, the style he has, the entertaining, enjoyable energy behind it. It's fun and easy to read, but very pertinent. And you're a good writer. So I've appreciated your writings that I've found here as well. So
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you, Fritz.
Yeah. So you can go easily enough. You can go to, let me go back to it. Yeah. casanostra.inc. You got a great website here that features all your stuff. And then, oh yeah, you are on X as well, I should say.
Yeah.
Where did I, hold on one second. I got to find you. Oh, there you are.
I think my X account is being run by an OpenClaw right now. So
okay, 99% OpenClaw. Chronicler of the Sovereign Age. You can find Avi_Burra, Avi Burra on X as well. A lot of people use X. You can find updates and stuff from that, but you've got AI feeding your feed now. Pretty
much. It's a slop account.
Okay.
I do retweet a few things, but yeah.
So Noster's where it's at, folks. If you want to connect and see the clear signal, go find Avi on whatever client you use on Noster. So there's that. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you joining me today. I had fun. We have Gen X BTC here, says, good guest choice. You've got fans out there in the world. So I really look forward to your future work whenever the timing's right for your next book, your UK release of your UK episode for Finding Home, and future writings and your work on Nos Fabrica. It's a lot of stuff, man. You're prolific, working hard in a lot of directions.
I need to slow down a little bit, Fritz, to be honest with you. I've been running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So, but yes, I appreciate you having me on. This is great. You very generous with your praise, which I do appreciate, Fritz. So it's been good. Great conversation. Glad I could do this.
You're welcome. I love seeing people going out there and doing things. And for some people, that's one specific big thing. For you, it's a lot of big things. And so it's just really exciting to see. So it's really fun. And yeah, you're doing a great job. I love it. So with that, I think we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll catch you all next time.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks,
bye.
Folks.